Last up, rules, risks, and ripples. Navigating uncertainty in the New Jersey economy. I'd like to ask Chris and Nuno to come up to the stage to share your insights and give us comfort somehow. All right, Chris, I'm waiting for, Chris. He's coming? Okay. All right, so we've talked a lot about uncertainty today, Nuno. And so hopefully you can give us some insights, and both of you can give us insights. Good morning, Nuno. So why don't you tell us, give us a quick background on who you are, what you do, and I'm not going to ask for any predictions. Just tell us, we'll get into it, because we've had a long day of uncertainty. Go ahead.
I think you probably heard that a little bit, but yeah, Chris Emigholz, Head of Government Affairs at BIA, and I try to navigate the uncertainty to make it a little more friendly for all of you.
Good morning, everyone. Nuno Francisco. I'm the Business Banking Market Executive for Citizens Bank. Essentially, our coverage teams are responsible for the day-to-day client management needs of businesses throughout the greater New Jersey, New York, Florida, and California areas.
Great. Okay, let's get started. What are your customers, what is the community saying about the current business climate? From your vantage point, right? We've heard all this morning some of the, uncertainty and concern in everyone's voices. But what are you guys seeing from your vantage point?
Yeah, so I think coming into the year, business owners were really upbeat about the economy and things that perhaps were in flight strategically, decisions made leading into the new year, a lot of change, obviously new administration. But there's been a lot of occurrences in the first quarter. So I think folks are perhaps just hitting the pause button a little bit just to get an understanding of what's exactly going to develop, what's going to roll out and ultimately impact their day-to-day business. But I think that's the general consensus. A ton of positivity coming into the year, and then given all that's happened in the last 8 to 10 weeks or so, really a little bit of a pause and more of a taking the time to digest and understand, and specifically what impacts is it? Is it operational? Is it strategic? Is it people impact? That's kind of some of the things that we're seeing over the last couple of months.
Yeah, I think my clients and customers are NJBIA's members, all of you, and interestingly, the spring is always an uncertain time at BIA because that's when our governor proposes our state budget, and then by the end of June, just as the spring's ending, the governor has to sign that budget that the legislature sends back to him. And that always kind of leads to what's going to happen in the budget. This year, the governor's proposed more than $1 billion in new taxes. Are those taxes going to happen this year or not? We're hearing actually, thankfully, a lot of pushback from the legislature. Hey, New Jersey's already too expensive. We can't compete. We're not affordable enough. Maybe we can't afford to do these over $1 billion new taxes. Also, BIA over the past couple of months, we always get questions about what's going on in the legislature, what's going on in the governor's office. We've gotten more calls about federal policy issues than I've ever seen at BIA over the past couple of months. And whether it's tariffs, immigration, funding freezes. So I think that is all something the BIA Government Affairs team has had to jump in to work on. We know that New Jersey is overly regulated. We know that it's too expensive and the tax is too high, but now having this uncertainty about what's going to happen in our state budget, we also are facing political uncertainties where we're going to have a new governor. No matter what, we will have a new governor a year from now. What's that going to bring? And BIA is spending a lot of time on behalf of our members trying to make sure that the new governor, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, one of the 9 people running, understands what businesses need. So we're working on the federal side, working on the state side, working on the political side, and trying to navigate these uncertainties.
And Chris, you bring up taxes, right? And I think that's one of the things, too, around planning, and certainly taxable events. But one of the things that's happening across the footprint, and specifically in New Jersey, and there was just a great piece in New Jersey Business Magazine that NJBIA put out around this great wealth transfer, right? So business owners, right, they're very good at running their business, but there's a couple of things that perhaps folks leave out, which is really a very basic, fundamental part of your business and your strategic goals, which should be around succession planning. And I think there's an opportunity for us to invest a little bit more in that type of strategic thought. So perhaps not exactly what's going to happen in the first quarter or second quarter, but as you kind of start to see the landscape of your own business and start to plan out 5-10 years in advance, and how do all these things impact those strategic decisions that we're having? I think something to the tune of 66% of businesses do not have any succession planning in written in stone, right? Like, so what happens tomorrow? And when you look at perhaps even the lens of a lender, that's one of the big pieces of conversation that our teams have with clients is, what happens in the event of, or what are your plans if, right? And it's all around succession planning, with that turnkey, whether it's retirement, whether it's a transfer of wealth, certainly something that's happening also within the ecosystem right now when we think about planning, priorities, et cetera, in the current environment.
I think given the economic outlook of our state, given this uncertainty, the one thing I couldn't stress more is BIA tries very hard, just with this event today and throughout the year, put resources in front of you. And you heard from Resources this morning. Citizens Bank's a fantastic bank. You guys all have banks. Couldn't go wrong with Citizens, but even if it's not, reach out to your banker, reach out to your attorney, reach out to your HR professional, finding out the ways to navigate the difficult times that sometimes New Jersey businesses have to deal with.
That's a good point about the succession planning. And I used to run a Family Business Institute, and I come from a family business, so I know how it's not done as much as it should be, like very rarely. But we have sort of contrarian issues right now, right? The stock market was sort of doing great until recently. So people who were thinking about retiring, right, were feeling good. And then the M&A market was starting to pick up. So businesses that wanted to sell were feeling good too. But now, like a bomb, all this uncertainty, tariffs, stock market drop. And so that's why, advisors, BIA and banks and banking folks are so important, right? The people you surround yourself with, those trusted advisors, are really important in difficult times, right? So I think everyone should sort of think about that I know we've gotten some great advice and guidance today, but I knew you mentioned one other thing today. You mentioned the immigration policies, right? This is a state of immigrants, right? And, I don't know if, I was talking to some immigrants in New Brunswick, and the place is like a ghost town because there's this fear, and I was just curious if you guys are seeing that, some of the restaurant owners, some of the people who employ immigrants are having trouble keeping their employees, or they're scared to come to work. Are you guys seeing that? I mean, this is anecdotal. I see it in New Brunswick. I see how quiet the streets are, and that's a domino effect of retail, hurting retail. Are you guys seeing that?
I would say, to start, anecdotes and perception does matter, even if it's not a reality. Sometimes how you lead, the image you're putting out there matters when you're governing. And I think immigration is good for business. And whether it's the Jersey Shore boardwalk experience, having students from Eastern Europe come in and serve you your Coors ice cream on the boardwalk. Right now, that actually the first Trump administration, we saw less immigration from Europe coming to Jersey Shore. That never really recovered as much as we wanted, and obviously we're seeing more tamping down on immigration. And then the pharmaceutical researcher that it might invent the next cure for cancer coming here, because this is where innovation's happening in America, in New Jersey. We want it in New Jersey, and yet we're saying, you know what, maybe we don't want all those immigrants coming to this country, documented, undocumented, whatever it is. There is a workforce shortage in this country. There's not enough people filling a variety of roles, whether it's the guy on the boardwalk or the guy in a lab, but we need more of them. And then there's obviously the perception about the undocumented workforce. But those perceptions mattered. And if we're seeing, I was just on a phone call, and I apologize, I had to step out and jump back in for this, but BIA was hosting a tax policy committee, and we had an assemblywoman on the budget committee, and she represents a lot of Korean immigrants up in North Jersey and Bergen County, and she's saying she's noticing that her immigrant communities are definitely feeling concerned, and there's definitely a lot of worry in the business community about what's going on with immigration. So I think trying to figure out how do we make immigration work for America and for New Jersey, and how do we figure out the perception might be here, and to educate people on those perceptions. And maybe not all of it's true, but regardless of what's true, if we have less immigrants wanting to come to America, regardless of what we're doing here, if we have less tourists wanting to come to America from Canada and Mexico, spending money here, if we have less people wanting to come to school here, wanting to come and get medical treatment here, all of that has an impact on banking with Citizens Bank, on being a member of BIA, on everything else you do in the economy in New Jersey might be hurt because of this kind of foreign sensitivity that we're creating.
Yeah, I think there's a broad spectrum of impact when it comes to immigration. Immigration does matter, and even to think about some of the farmland throughout the state and how those farmers leverage these resources and the cost of labor, that is certainly top of discussion when we talk to customers and think through perhaps some of these cycles. And yeah, there's a significant amount of concern.
The other concern, during times like these and with new technologies is deep fakes, fraud.
Yep.
Don't want to be too negative, but tell us what you're seeing and what Citizens is doing to sort of protect, us from, it seems like every other day that the technology is getting so good. You're getting a call, you're getting an email, you're getting a text that's so sort of attractive to push that button.
Yeah. My ride down here this morning, the most of it was catching up with a partner around this exact topic, fraud. And as I share with business clients when I have the opportunity to meet with them, one of my first lines that I go to is, if you're writing paper checks, you're going to have fraud. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So Citizens, and like many other great financial institutions, there's a lot of things, right? So incorporating the use of digital tools, right? When we think about the payment space and how money movement has transformed over the last 15 years, it's night and day, right? When you think about executing a payment in real time, I'm not even talking about ACH, but really leveraging the tools that lenders and financial services firms have built to literally move money at the snap of a finger, it's pretty insane. And what's scary is when there's fraud involved, there's no way to pull that back, right? Whether it's Zelle, whether it's real-time payments, whether it's wires, that money's out the door, that's it, right? So one of the things that we're making sure that we're talking through with customers is bring these sort of resources to the table and make it front and center. Like, that's essentially, when we're meeting with clients, the first topic of discussion is fraud. And what can you do as business owners is make sure that you have things like two-step authentications, right, where you do your little login on computer, but also do the text to confirm. One of the things that I'm huge in on is single payment administrators, right? So you own a business, and you yourself or your bookkeeper is in charge with making those payments executable, right? The first thing that you should do when you think about money movement is have a maker and a checker. Right? And I know it's painful, right? I get it. The experience is not great. But banks today have the tools where you're able to approve, review these things with the swipe of a finger, right? So you think about somebody like in your office that runs payments. So maybe they got to run payroll at the end of the week. Well, they'll execute the transaction, and then you should have the ability to have a push notification sent to your phone where you approve it, like you release the transaction. So that's what I call maker checker. Incorporating the use of tools around your email servers. I can't tell you how many clients have their email inboxes, their service taken over by the bad guys. It's insane. And I mean, even phone scams these days, you're able to get a telephone call. When you look at your caller ID, it'll say Citizens Bank, but it's some fraudster in a basement somewhere trying to do bad things. And again, urge the multiple authentication pieces, whether it's around process or the people component of it, right? Have somebody in the office be that maker checker with you, or just use some of the tools that the bank enables within their own platforms so that you're protected, right? And really limit yourself to approving things over the phone, saying yes, or just taking an email from, the bank's never going to email you asking you to authorize a payment, things like that. You should be able to call somebody that you can speak to, a live human, and have it be a number that you see on your statement, on the bank's website, et cetera. But I think something like, every day, a day doesn't go by where we don't hear about a client being impacted. So certainly top of mind when we think about our industry specifically. The fraud has gotten far more sophisticated. You know, it used to be they would take checks and alter them. The game is different. It's all about technology, and they know how to, you know, penetrate these financial services firms and do bad things. So the more that you can invest in putting some processes in place with your banks to protect you from there, some fraud prevention services, certainly something that's worth the money. If there is a cost, something that's certainly worth the money.
Yeah, for sure. It's a race, the technology race, right? Bad against good. And, you know, with the deepfake technology, they can actually, you know, make it seem like you're talking, you know, on a FaceTime call. I mean, in Korea, I think some CFO lost $20 million through a deepfake, right? So and the voice now, you know, 5 seconds, they have your voice. So the reality, I mean, I'm sure you guys are protecting yourselves, but you could get a call from your banker. I'm just hypothetically, I'm not sure this happened, but they could sound like your banker and say, sure, you know, so there's so many ways to be malicious here. You just have to be very careful. And again, I know the banks are doing a good job on fighting it, but you have to be vigilant. You have to be vigilant. Simple as that. Okay, questions. Questions right there. Eric.
Hi, this question is for Nuno. I'm a CPA, so I'm talking from that perspective. Succession planning is really vital, and I'm doing it with some of my clients as well. It's not a spoken topic, especially where it's family businesses are concerned. My question to you is this: in terms of the current economy, do you see people borrowing money right now for growing their businesses as banker, or are they still hesitant on investing money? Because I guess sometimes they say, you know, when the economy is going down, or, you know, it's better to invest more money, so that way it's a longer perspective. So in your opinion, like, what do you see?
Great question. I think consumers and business owners alike have gotten more and more used to higher for longer, right? Interest rates now, everybody was saying they're going to go down, they're going to go down. What we did, we were spoiled for the last 15, 20 years, right? When you think about a mortgage rate in the early 2000s and the late 90s, folks were paying 9, 10% for a mortgage. So, you know, given all that's happened post-pandemic, right, when interest rates were, you know, with like a business loan with a 3 or a 4 handle on it, that's insane. Those days are over. So I think that customers have now, you know, really gotten to the belief that, you know, a 6%, a 7.5%, an 8% rate is not really all that bad. Having said that, pipeline is really perhaps at its peak currently. So I think, to my earlier point around some of the positivity or the upbeatness that business owners had in the turn of the year, certainly had folks raise their hand to perhaps acquire a piece of equipment, perhaps to negotiate out of a lease and buy their own space where they can occupy and actually build wealth, right? To your point around succession planning, I always tell business owners that is the quickest and best way to build wealth is invest in your own space. If you own a business, you should operate out of a space that you own. But yeah, I mean, pipelines are bigger than ever. Clients are taking meetings around opportunities, but I think it's with the sentiment that, yes, there's a little bit of a pause here. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely things going on in the marketplace that keeps me optimistic around clients wanting to invest. Again, whether it's in people, whether it's in equipment, and I said, like, commercial real estate, it seems to be something that is really, really top of mind for customers as well.
I think we've been somewhat negative with some of the things talking about technology, the negative aspects, trade. I heard tariffs were discussed earlier. But there is some reason for optimism also, but this is another thing that's up in the air, is the renewal of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act from 2017 in the federal government. And obviously, New Jersey taxes are up in the air right now, but they're small compared to what the federal tax changes could potentially do. And so if we see the federal government, and they're moving all the day, every single day on this, if we see some meaningful improvements to tax code done permanently, not just the temporary tax changes that were done in 2017. After 2017's tax changes, we saw more job creation. We saw more investments across the board. We saw a lot of economic activity stimulated by what the feds did. I am confident if we see renewal of TCJA and maybe some improvements. I know there's talk about SALT, and obviously the SALT cap was a big impact on New Jersey taxpayers. If we fix that without actually touching anything on the business SALT, but fix it on the individual SALT, if we look at manufacturing tax rates, which are being discussed, if we make permanent some of the other tax cuts that were done, that'll have a big impact on the economy, and that could offset some of the worries that are out there and the uncertainties out there. But that is still an uncertainty. It's a looming potential reason for optimism, but we don't know what's going to happen, and obviously what could happen could be complicated by what federal government programs will be cut, which is another concern. So, but I do think there's reason for optimism there with the tax discussions going on in Washington.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions? No questions. Okay. As far as other advice about around the tariffs, anything that you're giving to your clients? No.
Yeah, so that's certainly something that's also at the top of conversations these days with clients, because that has impact. And where we see most impact is in the space of wholesalers, distributors, because they're not setting that final cost to the consumer, to the person that's actually swiping at the retail store, online, et cetera, to buy those goods. So one of the things that we're talking through is to think about the impact of these tariffs. Is what are we doing to get creative with cross-functional, cross-border needs, right? So a lot of leverage, a lot of opportunity for us to use foreign currency services, right? So perhaps, not turn our back, but get clients a little bit more accustomed to some other ways of executing foreign payments outside of traditional wires or, paper checks, right? You lose a lot in fee volume and in cost when you're transacting in those type of transactions, but getting customers really comfortable with operating on an FX line. Certainly, you have some folks, going back to the dialogue around pipeline, they're leveraging their lines of credit to offset and to absorb some of these costs. So it's been somewhat of a strategic play around margins, right? I think folks are willing to sell a little bit less if they can keep their margins steady. Some folks have an opposite view on things, that they don't mind the impact of top-line revenue and taking a hit perhaps on margins if they can keep their customers engaged. So there's been, again, a lot of dialogue, but it's been great to see the business community kind of react differently and understanding that there's not one solution for all industries, right? They're different. Industries are going to have different needs, and their end clients are all different, right? So it's been great to see folks adapt and pivot to be able to overcome some of these challenges around tariffs.
Did want to jump back, talking about technology and some of the problems. Made me think, talking about our economic outlook, a lot of it's our regulatory burdens in New Jersey. And you raised a lot of excellent points about the worry about technology going too far. But sometimes when the legislature sees things that they're worried about, they often will then enact legislation that goes too far and makes New Jersey an outlier. So we're worried about these uncertainties. And obviously, there's some federal ones that we have limited control over in New Jersey. But we worry about energy costs going up and environmental costs going up. There's a lot of times there's a mandate or a regulation that's in the background that went too far, that makes New Jersey an outlier, and it costs companies money to comply with. We're worried about housing costs. There might be some regulation in the background that makes housing costs as expensive as they are. Right now, the governor just proposed a tax increase for a realty transfer fee increase for homes sold over $1 million. That'll have a chilling effect on the real estate market. We see labor burdens that are added to the labor market, and it's going to make labor more expensive and compliance more expensive. So sometimes the well-intentioned things about worrying about AI and deepfakes go too far in New Jersey, and we have well-intentioned legislators that all of a sudden are making New Jersey the worst in the nation for something, and then all of a sudden our economic outlook in New Jersey is not so good because we're doing something no one else does.
Yeah, I think, like, in many, and I'm a New Jerseyan, like, through and through, raised in Newark. I love New Jersey, and I represent different parts of the bank throughout the country. But we're really at an advantage when it comes to business opportunity, and I think you bring up some great points. And one of the things that really does stick out in Jersey is the cost of compliance, right? And how that impacts labor, right? You have warehouses, factories that today need to train or make their workers compliant on ABC or XYZ, and there's costs involved to business owners that they never had to face 15, 10 years ago, or perhaps their peers or their competitors in other states don't have those same challenges. So great point. I think you're totally spot on when you talk about all those burdens that unfortunately the business community does get to be exposed here in New Jersey.
Yeah, and on that point, I know Michelle and team have been fighting for less regulations forever, right? And so the more we can do to push our politicians to lower the regulations. But one more quick question, then we gotta split.
Yeah, there's a ton of work being done around AI and how some new technologies can support, communication, things of that sort. I think when it comes to payments, because the blockchain world is so unregulated today, and it would be really tough for a financial services firm to adapt and adopt, right? So one thing to get with it, but then it's one thing to go and execute. So I think those conversations are ongoing. I think many financial services firms are having those considerations, but because that space is still kind of so unregulated and so, the instructions aren't there, the code isn't there from the regulators, it's probably something that's going to take a little bit more time for banks to really adopt and roll out to clients, but the conversations are for sure ongoing.
Okay, well thank you so much. That was really a great panel, and thank you to the audience. And Michelle's going to come up and.
Thank you.
So some really timely and relevant discussion this morning, incredibly engaging. And again, this is the key, is when the audience is sharing their experience, even though you may not be sitting on the stage, and a lot of the sideline discussion that takes place when we take break or even at your table, really big deal. So can keep the dialogue going from today, right? There were a lot of tidbits that we could walk away with, a lot of best practices, some challenges, some opportunities. Reach out to each other. Please reach out to NJBIA. We are an incredible resource for things that you need. We say each and every day, whenever we speak on policy, we are always armed with data and information and hardcore research, and that extends into business areas and trends as well. So please take advantage of that for us. I do want to emphasize one thing as I let you go. I started with my anecdote at the beginning about the brackets and my emotion versus science on picking my brackets, right? Check fraud. It is a real thing. And people would say, check fraud, what are you talking about? Because all the attention in financial services is on everything now that is in technology, right? A paper check. Do not put a paper check in your mailbox and put your flag up for any reason whatsoever. It will be stolen, and you'll be the subject of check fraud. And my story is a check to my nephew in Georgia for a birthday. As aunts, uncles, parents, you never get thank yous anyway, right? Did you get that check? No, I didn't get your card. You didn't get my card 3 weeks later? Really? No, didn't. 6 weeks later, I got a letter from the United Postal Service that there was actually an investigation in our neighborhood, and I was the subject of check fraud. Pulled right out of the mailbox. I got the card back, of course, without the check and the lottery ticket. He had just turned 18, right? But this is real. To this day now, I will only go directly to a postal box and put something right into the box, and no longer will I put something in the neighborhood. So this really is real in real time. This stuff is really happening. So good tidbits for us to walk away with. I want to thank again all the amazing partners who made this happen today. I want to thank all of you for taking a whole morning to be here on what I think were really timely, relevant, important topics. It looks like we have a drawing, so I'm going to take a drawing for, what are we giving away? The emergency road kit. Everybody needs this. I've got one in my trunk for sure. So let's see who the winner is. George Chicolo. There we go. All right. Very nice. So just some upcoming events as I send you on your way. Please join us. We talked about tariffs. If you are in manufacturing or around manufacturing, supporting manufacturing, we have a town hall coming up on May 8th. May 5th. It's incredibly important that we, as your voice for business, hear the impacts of you in real time. We're actually heading out to Piscataway from here to do an interview on impact of small business on tariff. No political statements, just objectively, how are we handling these things with information for everybody. Our North Jersey Transportation Forum on May 9th, Cannabis Update on May 14th, and on June 17th, signature event. The first time the primary winners, the two people going on to be governor of New Jersey, time-honored tradition, present before the NJBIA business community. It's one of our biggest events that we do every other year. They will be live presenting their vision for New Jersey on June 17th. So please join us for that. All the information on our website. I want to thank our great BIA team. Everybody be safe, be well, and we'll see you at the next event. Thank you.